Okay, so this video is going to be talking about Indianapolis. I had a subscriber tell me to do a video that talks about the places I lived before because I've done videos talking about Seattle and Tacoma and what I like about both places, what I don't like about both places. And, excuse me, to be honest, I couldn't imagine living any other place in America other than in Seattle. There may be some people who have their views about Seattle. And when I say Seattle, I'm talking about this entire region. There may be some people that have their views and negative opinions about the area, and they may not like it, and they may say a lot of different things. But to use something that Sonny Liston said, and I can't remember the city he said it about, but I'm going to say it in general. I'd rather be a lamppost in this region than to be a mayor of any other city in the country, to be honest with you. And I say that not as a diss to everybody else, and here has its share of issues. It has its share of problems. It has a lot of different things that don't make a lot of sense. But just looking at politics in general, which I'm not going to discuss, but just looking at what's on the ballot versus what other places have on the ballot or don't have, it lets me know that this is the place I should be. Again, this is not for everyone. When people talk about how they hate Tacoma, typically people don't like Tacoma because of the diversity. It is what it is, right? They don't like seeing a lot of brown and black people, but they just don't come out and say that. Also, you have a lot more working class folks here. You don't have a lot of the wealthy Uber Tesla drivers that you see up in Seattle. And when people say they don't like Seattle, it's because Seattle is a different type of city. I've said this before. It's really a city that's kind of introverted or really introverted. And if that's not you, it's going to be hard to live here. The weather this time of year is always gray. That's hard for people. And it's expensive. So a lot of people they don't like it. And there's other reasons. It's just not a fit for a lot of people. I don't know how else to say it. Just like there's a lot of places that are not a fit for me. Now I can live anywhere, but as far as being happy, it's not the case. The only other places I would consider living would be Hawaii. When we're talking about the United States, Hawaii, or maybe San Diego. Maybe. And I love San Diego. The weather is amazing. But this video is not about not about San Diego, not about Hawaii, or about the Puget Sound. It's about Indianapolis. I lived in Indianapolis. Outside of Kentucky, Indianapolis was the longest I've lived in any other place. I lived there for over 10 years. And to me, it was a natural progression. At the time, I was married, not to Noelle, but to someone else. And she came from a really big city, and she wanted to live in a big city. And, of course, at that time, I was in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Bowling Green, Kentucky, there's not much, especially at that time, there's not much going on. It's a great city, but there's just not a lot to do. When it comes to jobs, not a lot there either. So Indianapolis has by far more stuff to do and definitely better paying jobs and more opportunity. So I thought, okay, she's got a lot of family in San Francisco. That's a pretty far jump. And it's expensive there. Indianapolis, I have family there. It's close to my hometown of Bowling Green, Kentucky. It's like a 4 or 5 hour drive, I believe. And so it's not that big of a deal, right? And so Indianapolis to me would have been a better fit for us. It's just straight up I-65 and that's it, right? So moved to Indianapolis and I thought it was the big time. To me, Indianapolis represents the big city. And, I studied Indianapolis, looked up as much information as I could about it. I'd been to Indianapolis, but not really in it. My mom is someone who hates to travel. We're completely opposite. My mom doesn't like to travel different places. She just doesn't. Never have. I never really got to see Nashville until I became an adult, and that was 60 miles away. So she never really, like Louisville, it's in the same state, never really got to see Louisville much. Like she just never really traveled. So when I became an adult, I was able to travel to these places, and pretty much they're kind of similar. Nashville, when you look at the Midwest, it is very similar. People don't like to admit that. But if you go to Cincinnati or Louisville or Nashville or St. Louis, Indianapolis, all those places are very similar in a lot of ways. They're similar in terms of how they view things. They're similar in terms of just their economies. They're similar in terms of just a lot of the things that they do. Like, you could pick someone up out of one of those places, one of those states, and drop them in the other, and you really probably wouldn't know you're in a different place. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, sorry, I'm getting a little bit of a cold. But to me, Indianapolis was a better fit than Louisville, right? I wanted to be out of the state of Kentucky. Nothing wrong with Kentucky, but I wanted to be out of the state of Kentucky. And Nashville wasn't really an option for us. I wanted to go up north. I was raised in the South. I know what the South is about, so I wanted to kind of get away from that. And so Indianapolis it was. Now, Indianapolis is a great city when you look at, from a business standpoint, it's a really good city. There's a lot of opportunity there. They've really improved a lot recently on the tech side of things. So IT is becoming big there. Their airport's okay. They're just now getting a flight, I think, to Paris. Prior to that, they hadn't had any flights to Europe. Barely had a flight to Canada. But it's a growing airport and growing city. One of the things they really take a lot of pride on is the outdoors. They do have a lot of trails and bike paths. That was something that I've noticed that they really focused on. The Monon Trail is amazing. And then, of course, they have a lot of the bike paths, which a lot of other cities have looked at because they've done a really, really, really good job. They've even taken parts of downtown and they completely vacated streets to turn them into an experience, right? So that you can basically just be about, and actually when they hosted the Super Bowl, those areas, I forget the name of the area in downtown, but basically it was a area where they have the zip line going, right? So Indianapolis is great when it comes to, if you want to go and bicycle all over the place or take trails. The Monon can go forever. You can be in Indianapolis and literally, if you can handle walking that far, you can walk completely out of the city all the way north up into, Hamilton County, right? So it is a pretty big deal, right? When you look at nightlife, I have not found a city yet that can beat it that I've lived in, right? Even Seattle does not hold a candle to Indianapolis's nightlife. Doesn't even come close. Doesn't come close. Now, I don't know about Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee will have Indianapolis's number on that, but I didn't live in Milwaukee. But when you compare even Cincinnati, Indianapolis by far beats Tacoma. That's not hard. It beats Seattle. It beats Albuquerque, which that's not hard either. And it beats all those other places. Now, it does not beat Nashville. That's a hard one. Nashville has a lot going for it. But I did notice that. So if you love to party or go out, Indianapolis is your place. When it comes to compactability, downtown Indy is very walkable. It has a lot of conventions and it's known for its convention business because of that downtown being so walkable. It has basically the mile square. Everybody tries to pull and copy off of Chicago a little bit, where Chicago has the Magnificent Mile, which is nothing but shops and luxury stuff. Well, Indy can't really do that. So they have the Magnificent, they don't even call it Magnificent. They just have the mile square, which everything is in that square. Kind of. So you have the Lucas Oil Stadium, which is where the Colts play. You have, I know it as Conseco Fieldhouse, but now it's something else. That's down there. You have Victory Field, that's where the Pacers play. You have Victory Field, which is where the AAA minor league baseball team plays, the Indians. So you have all of that. Then not far from that is White River State Park, which is where the zoo is and all of that stuff, right? They also have back in the day, the city tried to have, and we're talking a long time ago, it tried to basically dig canals to bring imports into the city, right? So they try to use all waterways to do that. Well, that didn't work out too well, but the city actually did go through and pave in a lot of the areas so that you can actually have a nice walkable place. So downtown, they actually have where you can walk around the canal, and it's really nice, and they've built a lot of housing around it. So there's a lot of great things. And when we went to Indianapolis, now it looked like a completely different city. I think Indianapolis is starting to reach that same type of chemistry as a Denver, right? People say Denver and Seattle are the same. I completely disagree. I think Seattle has left Denver a little bit. I think Portland and Denver are very similar, and I would have to put Indianapolis kind of close to, it's getting there, right? It's getting to that point. There's so much to look at, right? Downtown Indy is really vibrant. Really, I remember when I first moved there was not a lot of people walking around downtown. Seems to be changing quite a bit. There's a lot of housing down there. They've really put an emphasis on that. They've really developed a lot in terms of just bringing housing down there and bringing more people downtown. So that's a good thing. It has a mall downtown, Circle Center Mall, but that mall is kind of dying out along with a lot of other malls. So it's a pretty cool deal. The problems, and I can go on and on and on. The problems with Indianapolis are a few. Transportation sucks. I mean, everybody knows that. When you look at the bus service, Indigo, it's basically, it doesn't go. I mean, like, you can't get anywhere with the bus service. It takes forever. They've tried to improve that, and they're still working on it. They've built a transit station downtown, which is nice. I didn't get to see it when I was there, but I've seen pictures of it. It looks great. They're trying to work on the Red Line, which is a bus rapid transit system, and they're going to try to have other bus lines throughout the city. They're trying to improve Indigo and make the service a lot more frequent, but it was one of the biggest cities that had the worst bus service. Out of 100, I think it ranked right at 100. It was just horrible. I mean, even my hometown of Bowling Green, Kentucky, of 60,000 people, had better bus service than Indianapolis. And so that city does not really put a lot of emphasis, and a lot of people don't have a lot of belief in the bus service, right? So it really is a shame, but they're trying to address that. The other thing that some people may not like is it's called the Crossroads of America because it has more interstates than most cities have. I don't know if it has more than any other city, but there's a lot of them. There's I-65, I-70, I-74. I mean, there's so many different interstates that run into the city. And then you have 465, which goes all the way around the city. It forms a huge beltway around the city. And that's why a lot of people call it the, Circle City, because downtown on Monument Square is a circle. And then when you go out, you have 465, which is a circle. But one of the things with the circle is you create a lot of traffic. And so the interstate system, even for a city that's not that big, Indianapolis kind of is big. I mean, again, they took the county and they merged it with the city. So that's why you have the massive population. But when you create a circle like that, and Columbus has done something similar, a lot of cities have done that, you create a whole lot of traffic. I don't know why. Someone probably can explain that, but there's a lot of traffic. 465 gets backed up. A lot of the interstates get backed up. But because there's so many of them, it gets backed up at certain points. There's certain choke points, especially around the south side, up around the northwest side, which is where a lot of the industrial stuff are, around the airport. That's the case when 465 merges into I-65, or I-65 and 465 as they actually kind of cross, that's a choke point. So there's a lot of those. Traffic is a bit of a concern, and it always has been. So if you don't like that, it's probably not the place for you. Going back to mass transit, you are in a conservative state. And so conservative states and cities, and this is the reason why Amazon won't choose a lot of these places. I knew Indianapolis was not going to be it. Not only just because it's a conservative city or a conservative state, but because of the simple fact it just doesn't have mass transit. It doesn't have a whole lot of the things that Amazon's looking for. It doesn't really have that, right? There's no way to get around quickly and easily in Indianapolis. It's just a big, sprawling mass of a city. And then when you look at the suburbs, they just go on forever. I remember when, basically Fishers was not that big of a deal. Now Fishers has all the stuff. It's like the up and coming Carmel. Like Carmel was the big deal. Now Fishers is becoming the big deal too. But these cities just go on and on and on and on. Well, that's cool when you're trying to be a Houston, Texas, or a Los Angeles. But those cities now realize that's a bad plan. Atlanta, that's a bad plan to have urban sprawl. Most people, especially young folks, want to live right in the center of downtown, not just hugging a car all day. And so Indianapolis is definitely a car city. And so Amazon is not at all into that. The fact that if you're in a conservative state, typically conservatives don't want to pay for mass transit. They just don't. It's a rare thing. It never really happens. And whatever. I mean, I'm not conservative nor liberal. I think it's all stupid. But anyhow, typically you're not going to have folks paying for mass transit. They think there's no point in that. Even though other things are subsidized, everything in your life is subsidized, but people have their own views, and that's fine. However, businesses like Amazon don't want to locate in a place that doesn't have good transportation. So if transportation is important to you, then Indianapolis might not be the case for you. Back to that conservative attitude. Now, it's not as bad in Indy as some other places, but it is there. It is present. It's not a place for me. It's just not a place for me any longer. Not so much that in terms of people being conservative being a problem, that's not it. It's just the whole overall viewpoint of people I don't really vibe well with. The general consensus, and even when I can say that about my hometown of Bowling Green, Kentucky, the general viewpoint on things I don't really agree with. Transportation, for example. I think transportation is amazing. Having mass transit, I think is amazing. But that doesn't align with a lot of people. So it's kind of like it doesn't work. I don't fit well in those places. Me, instead of complaining about it, I just up and move. You know what I'm saying? You're never going to change a place that historically that's kind of the way people are. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with people being conservative or people being liberal or a mix of the two. That's not really the concern. Me, I wanted to move to a place that kind of fits and molds me. And that's the reason why I said, to me, this is one of the best places in the country for me. Now, for some people, absolutely not. But with that said, Indianapolis has a lot of pluses and minuses. It really and truly depends on what you're looking for. The job pay there is okay. Housing's not super crazy expensive. You can find some pretty good housing. There's a lot of events that happen there all the time. A lot of big concerts, not super huge big, because you got to keep in mind places like Chicago will have those, right? Chicago keeps Indianapolis from having a lot of the big concerts, right? But they do have some pretty decent sized ones. If you like to travel to different cities really quickly, you have Chicago right up the road, not far. You have Louisville down the road, not too far. St. Louis to your west, Cincinnati over towards your southeast. So there's plenty of places you can drive to within a few hours, which is something that doesn't really happen here. Like, you can drive to different places, but as far as another big city, you don't have a lot of those over here on this side of the country. That's one thing that's really cool about Indianapolis. If you wanted a cute little vacation, you can easily go and do that. So anyhow, that's pretty much it. I'm sure there's tons of other stuff that I could talk about in terms of Indianapolis. Like I said, I lived there for over 10 years, know a lot about it. When it comes to, like I said, just general attitudes, especially when places I worked at, that's where I kind of understood. It wasn't so much, and then some of the places I lived at, like I had a house in certain areas. Where I had a house was very close to where I worked at, and the viewpoint of some of the people I just didn't gel with. Not my employees, they were great. My employees were great. But those who were in management, and I'm not trying to throw shade, it's just the truth. Those who were in management kind of reflected views that I just did not understand, and I still don't. It's just not my cup of tea. And then the place where I bought my house, folks around there had a similar viewpoint. And that to me was like, ready to go. So we were planning on going to San Diego at that point. That job actually transferred me to Albuquerque, which was great. And I'll talk about Albuquerque too in another video. But anyhow, some places don't fit people very well. Instead of complaining about it, do something about it. Move to a different location that fits you better, because that place is not going to change for you. You have to either adjust to it and deal with it, or you move to some place that's similar to your viewpoint and thoughts and all that type of stuff. No place is a utopia. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys are having a great, what is today, Friday? Yay, for the weekend. I have a lot of work to do. I got to dig for trees and stuff. But anyway, until next time, I will see you. Take care.